Okay, so here's our new x3. So the x1 we had is the original x1. x2 is x2 minus its projection onto x1. And then the x3 we got by taking two successive projections. And so here's what we have. And it's good for you to check that this is a mutually orthogonal set. If you take the inner product of any of these two vectors with something other than itself, you're going to get 0. So our last step is we normalize the vectors. So we replace xi, each xi, with the unit vector in its direction. That's xi hat. And the way we get that is we take the vector xi and divide it by its length. And the way, remember, we define the norm or the length of a vector in a generic inner product space is it's the square root of the vector inner product with itself. Okay, so for x1, we already know. We've already done the inner product of x1 with itself before. That worked out to be 1/5. So x1 hat, oops. So that means that the norm of x1 is the square root of 1/5, which is 1 over the square root of 5. So that means that x1 hat is 1 over the square root of 5 times x1, which is the square root of 5, x1, which is the square root of, the square root of 5, t squared. Alright, so x1 hat is the square root of 5 t squared. And it's good for you to check. If you take this, multiply by itself, and integrate from 0 to 1, you will in fact get 1. Okay, we're now going to replace x2 with the unit vector in its direction. Now, just like with x1, we know the inner product of x2 with itself is 1 over 48. That means that the length of x2 is the square root of 1 over 48, which is 1 over the square root of 48, which is 1 over 4 radical 3. So x2 hat is 1 over 4 radical 3 times x2, which is 4 radical 3 times t minus 5/4 t squared. So I get 4t radical 3 minus 5t squared radical 3. That's my x2 hat. I'll write the squared first. 5t squared radical 3 plus 4t radical 3. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is replace x3 with x3 hat. And so I need to know the length of x3. I need to know the inner product of x3 with itself. So we haven't done this one yet. x3 was 1 minus 4t plus 10/3 t squared. So this means I got to integrate from 0 to 1 the square of this polynomial. And we've already reviewed enough, I think, basic calculus in this checkpoint quiz, so I'll go ahead and tell you you get 1/9 out of this. That means that the length of x3 is the square root of this, which is 1/3, which means x3 hat is 1 over 1/3 x3, which is 3 times itself, So I get x3 hat is, I'll write the t squared first, 10t squared minus 12t plus 3. Okay, so our new basis consists of t squared radical 5, negative 5t squared square root 3 plus 4t square root 3 and 10t squared minus 12t plus 3. And I leave it to you to check that these are mutually orthogonal and that they're all length 1. That'll do it for quiz 20.